Hi, Mitch Tanenbaum here. Thanks for joining me today. This is the security news update for November 27th, 2022. In the alerts department, I find this almost humorous, except for the poor people who lost money due to this. Most people are familiar with Zell. It's a competitor to some of the other peer-to-peer money transfer solutions. The way the laws are written right now, if you lose money by falling for a scheme, you're out the money, however much that is. Unlike using your credit card or even your debit card, which debit cards offer less protections than credit cards, but they still offer some. Or you're writing a check. There are no protections under federal state law for what happens if you fall victim to a Zell scam. The results of that have been a lot of people being upset, some lawsuits being filed, and Congress, the Senate, going off and asking some embarrassing questions, which the banks are being pretty quiet about. I use Zelle myself relatively frequently for moving money from bank to bank. And the other day, I got a call from one of my banks saying that they detected potential fraud on my account, and they froze my account as a result of that. Now, a lot of people would be upset about that, but I thought it was kind of interesting because of what they're facing with bad PR with Zelle fraud. The only part about it that didn't work terribly well is the unfreezing part is still a little clunky. The first time I called into the bank and they asked some questions and stuff, and they said they unfroze the account, but in reality they didn't. That's, I assume, a training issue on the part of their employees, given I think this is a brand new thing, and they're still training their employees and how that works. But it is sort of interesting that when the heat gets too hot in the financial services kitchen, the banks do have the ability to detect and stop fraud. What they don't like doing is what happened here is this wasn't fraudulent. This was me just transferring money from one bank to another. And then, having to deal with probably an irate consumer. That same consumer, by the way, would also be irate if they got conned out of a scam and the bank didn't detect it. So there's one of these situations where the banks can't win no matter what happens. But nonetheless, they're at least trying. Also in the financial fraud department, DraftKings, the betting website, um, God, is an interesting challenge. So what happened here is what DraftKings says, and I don't have any reason to doubt them, is that some folks fell victim to password stuffing attacks where the bad guys just take passwords which you used on other accounts that have been compromised, the other websites have been compromised, and they try stuffing them into your, in this case, DraftKings account and see whether it works. And since the vast majority of the people don't turn on two-factor authentication, if you reuse the same password, then they'll get in. And then what they did, the bad guys, is they turned on two-factor authentication, pointing to a phone that the bad guys controlled, and they changed the password, locking you out of your account. The sort of ugly part of this is DraftKings, like a lot of folks, do not have a call center that you can call into and say, "Hey, what's going on here?" So the best you can do is send them an email, or they say, "Well, log on and send us a message." Well, the problem is my account's been compromised. I can't log on. So the best thing you could do is send them an email. In the meantime, your account. Oh, what the way this hack works is after they lock you out of your account, then they take your linked bank account, dump it into DraftKings, and then move it from there. So the end result is your bank account gets emptied out. Now, in that case, I am not quite clear how federal law protects or doesn't protect you. But DraftKings, realizing the really bad PR here and the relatively small size of the attack, it was only a few $100,000, decided to make everybody whole. And I'm sure there will be lawsuits, and I'm sure there will be investigations. But fundamentally, the problems you have is if you have an online service which has access to your bank account and you don't have any way to contact them in case of an emergency like this, you run a risk, and then you have to decide, is it worth doing business with people like that? I noticed that Frontier Airlines just got rid of their call center because call centers are expensive and the turnover is horrible and training is difficult. But you have to decide whether you want to deal with it. And I don't know, because I don't do online gambling, whether any of the other online gambling sites do have call centers and do have a situation where if this happens, you can call them. I don't know, are they going to change practices here? I'm not at all clear. And whether the banks have a legal obligation to make you whole or not in this situation, because it came from an authenticated account. They said, their solution was turn on two-factor authentication and pick complex passwords. I would say, which DraftKings did not say, don't link your bank account to your DraftKings account. The problem with doing that is at that point, anybody who gets into your DraftKings account can empty your bank account. That's okay. If you don't care about that, then link away. If that represents a problem for you, I mean, because you might get whole, but it might take you a week, couple of weeks, whatever. And so if you're without the use of your money for however long it takes the bank and the vendor, whoever it is, DraftKings in this case, to decide that they're going to give you back your money, then linking your bank account to your whatever online account is great. I don't personally do that, except to folks that I really, 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 really trust. So anyway, that's the end of the alerts section. For reference, DOD has released their zero trust strategy roadmap, and I don't think I'd want to be the CIO of DOD. Their target to get zero trust in place is 2027, which seems like a long time given this is the end of 2022. But DOD does not do change very well at all. So I think anything shorter than that would probably be very unrealistic. And believe it or not, I think 2027 might be aggressive. But what they've done is they've created this roadmap, and I think it's a good roadmap. I think that not only can DOD use it for zero trust, but you can use it for zero trust as well. So check that out and see whether that's something that you could use for your zero trust strategy. In the patches department, this week is a patch not to do. The Microsoft November patches causes some domain controllers to freeze and restart. Obviously, that's a problem from an authentication standpoint. Microsoft was trying to fix an LSAS bug. They may have fixed that bug. I don't think so, actually. But it had this nasty side effect of basically crashing domain controllers. So they do not have a patch. They do have a workaround, though. So from that perspective, there is an option there. And Google has patched their 8th 0 day this year in Chrome. The good news is we are at the end of November, beginning of December soon, and the counter will start over. So probably it's likely we won't get to 10. We'll stay in single digits, but still, this is an attack which is out there in a while and is being exploited. And Google did release an emergency fix for this particular problem. So the fact that they released an emergency fix tells you that at least they think it's a problem. Next, under the education department, anybody know what a zettabyte is? I actually didn't know, other than I knew it was a really big number. Apparently, a zettabyte is a billion terabytes. That's a lot. And the predictions are that the world will need to store 200 zettabytes by 2025, which is not very far. So, think about that. A zettabyte is a billion terabytes. A terabyte is 1,000 gigabytes. And typically the hard drive on your laptop is less than 1 gigabyte. So this is a really big number. There's a lot of data there. And this is going to be a problem which is going to face many businesses as they collect all this data in terms of data management, data storage, compliance with privacy regulations, all kinds of things like that. If you need help figuring out what to do with your own version of zettabytes worth of data, then please contact us. Next in the learning department, the CISA has released what they're calling the Infrastructure Resilience Planning Framework, or IRPF. It's a 5-step program having nothing to do with stopping drinking, and provides tools and resources to identify critical infrastructure, or whatever that means for you, assess risks, and develop and implement resilient solutions so that, if you get attacked, you actually don't go down in a bunch of flames. If you're a business that really doesn't care about whether or not your infrastructure is up, and there are some of those, not very many, but if you are one of those, then this doesn't apply to you. For everybody else, this is kind of pocket change in terms of what you got to go do. This is kind of critical. In the breaches department, and there's a lot of them, of course, and some big ones. So there's an Australian insurance company, Medibank, that has been fighting over a ransomware attack that happened a few weeks ago. They've said that they don't plan to pay the ransom, which is fine. This is the right answer, probably. But in the meantime, the hackers keep releasing tranches of data. This time, 1,500 records, and they include people with heart conditions and diabetes and asthma and cancer, mental health problems. So you have all this protected health information. They're going to get whacked seriously. Australia is looking at passing a law that would make it a criminal offense to pay a ransom. So that's kind of interesting. That does not exist in the United States. The FBI has said for a long time that they recommend not doing it. It's anticipated that these guys will leak more data over time, and these guys have millions and millions of customers, so it could go on for a while. Next, Moldova got hacked. This is one of these things of what were they thinking? Apparently, the Minister of Justice and the Defense Minister, National Security Advisor, had their conversations leaked on a website called Moldova Leaks. They were using a free mobile app to have so-called secure communications. I think it was Telegram, I'm not sure. And it got compromised. I'm not sure what the logic might be for thinking that a free app is the way to go off and secure sensitive national security conversations, but apparently they thought that, and perhaps they have learned from that maybe they should get some advice from an expert before they decide that a free app written by semi-amateurs is really the way to go. And then another California county got breached. This time it is Tehama County. The bad news here is they said that it leaked residence data, which could include birth certificates and other things that you can't change, and things which having certified copies of could have some security implications for you. The bad guys were in there for about 6 months between the end of 2021 and spring of 2022. For whatever reason, their investigation stretched to the summer of 2022, and this is the winter of 2022, and they're finally now announcing it. They said that hackers stole 32 gigabytes worth of data. Likely this is a situation where they didn't really know what the hackers stole. And, I would ask you, for your business, if the hackers got in there and they stole data, would you know what data the hackers accessed? Do you have enough logging and auditing turned on, preserved in a way that the hackers couldn't compromise, that you would know what they took? If you don't, then you might want to do that. And if you don't know how to do that, then you might want to talk to us. And finally, in the breaches department, Cincinnati State College is another school that got hacked with a ransomware on Thanksgiving. They are managing to continue classes, I think, in part because a lot of the colleges are using cloud-based commercial services as opposed to their own stuff. And email is now back online, supposedly, but many other services like financial aid and printing and VPN and the departmental shares and the admission process and a bunch of other services are still down with no estimate for when it's going to get recovered. So, it's a challenge, right? The colleges and schools don't have a lot of money to spend on expertise. On the other hand, the hackers figure, yeah, pretty good target. Let's see what we can steal. And continuing, the Twitter, and I'm not going to beat up Twitter here. Elon can deal with that however he wants to deal with that. But I think there is a lesson to be learned from the rapid staff reduction that Twitter had. And it doesn't even matter if it's rapid staff reduction, it's staff reduction of key people. I think what they're discovering is that the recipe to the secret sauce that runs Twitter is probably walked out the door with the people who got fired. And for you, the lesson is, do you know what the secret sauce is for your business? And if some key personnel walked out the door for whatever reason, got hit by the proverbial bus, whatever the situation is, they were no longer available and were not on friendly terms with you. Would you be able to continue to keep your systems operational? Would you even know passwords to key systems and such? So I think that's the lesson to learn from the staff reduction. Twitter will do whatever it does, and it'll work out however it works out. So this is not really a Twitter problem. It's just kind of identified a problem, which I think a lot of businesses have. We've said forever that the Chinese are stealing our technology. That's old news. But what we have seen here, which I thought was pretty fascinating, is the folks at Los Alamos National Lab, which is one of the big Department of Energy labs. And they do research into all kinds of things, including nuclear weapons. They have lost over the past couple of decades over 150 scientists who've gone back to China. Why did they go back to China? Well, because they had secrets that that they have that China wanted, and it was cheaper to pay them, bribe them effectively to come back to China than it was to figure out the technology, whatever it was, by themselves. And a lot of these were some of them were actually Chinese citizens, but a lot of them were people of Asian descent who were U.S. citizens, who probably were able to get security clearances in many cases. But it's kind of interesting in terms of how do you deal with this? And this is a really detailed analysis explaining exactly what happened. I don't have a great solution in terms of what you do, but you got to be careful in terms of whom you give access. Obviously, part of it is compartmentalizing data so that the folks that may wind up going back to China or going to China, don't have access to all of the jewels, only the ones that you have to give them. Next, and this one is a serious challenge. Some people say, well, I don't care about privacy. I don't have anything to hide. And maybe that's true. What researchers have discovered is that several of the major tax preparation applications like H&R Block and radio talk show host Dave Ramsey's private label version of TaxSlayer transmitted an amazing amount of data back to places like Google and Facebook, possibly in violation of federal law. We shall see what happens there. I think it probably is in violation of federal law. And they're including, the data that they are sending to these guys includes your income, how big your tax refund was, even your kids' names, all kinds of stuff. And of course, when they got outed about it, they all said, "Oh, we care about your privacy, and we're not going to do that anymore." In fact, Dave Ramsey's talking head said, well, we didn't know that they were doing that. We were doing, they said they, but it's not they, it's we. We didn't know that we were doing this. Well, I don't know which is worse, the fact that they were too stupid to understand what they were doing, or that they were too careless to care about what they were doing. But it's only one of those two. Those are the only two options. H&R Block, the only one who came out clean was Intuit, who makes TurboTax. They send data before you log in, but the data is minimal because before you log in, they don't have any information about your tax return. So none of your tax return information are they sending. They're the only ones of the bunch of folks that these guys tested. what we need obviously is more research, doing more investigation to catch these guys, because if they get caught at it, they'll be embarrassed and they'll stop doing it, at least for a while. But absent that, there's no downside to doing it. And I think in this particular case, they may well have been breaking the law. So we'll see how that goes. And last for this week, the security news bites. Apparently, the feds are having problems retaining the folks that they have finally trained after all these years and how to do all the crypto investigations, crypto crime investigations, because these guys can go into the private sector and make twice as much money easily, maybe more, and it's hard to replace. Next, New York barred attorneys, people who are part of the bar in New York, are required to take 1 hour, exactly 1 hour of security and privacy training every 2 years, so 30 minutes a year. So I'm sure they will be totally fluent in all of the security and privacy concerns, both internally for their own organization to be able to advise their clients with 30 minutes worth of training, because, lawyers are fast learners. The man who cleaned up the Enron mess, who's now trying to clean up the FTX mess, said this thing is the biggest mess that he's ever seen in 40 years. It's absolutely horrible. What that probably means is that the 1 million creditors probably aren't going to see bupkis. And so for the poor consumer who had money at FTX, it's likely gone. They'll never see it, I don't think. And then some researchers did an interesting investigation to see whether repair techs at these big box stores, and it didn't name the names of them, but probably the likes of Best Buy and places like that, whether they could be trusted not to snoop on your data. So they took some computers and instrumented them so they could see what these guys were looking at. And what they discovered in about a half a dozen of these stores out of 16 that they tested, half a dozen of them snooped around, looked at stuff that they really shouldn't have been looking at. And a couple of them even copied some of the data. So if you had personal financial data or sensitive pictures, those would be copied by those folks. And for the ones who didn't copy it, we don't know if they just didn't take a screenshot with their phone. They could have done that as well, and it wouldn't have been as obvious. And then lastly, tech support email scams, according to the FBI, are on the rise. These are the ones where you get an email and says, your computer's infected, or we just renewed your antivirus subscription, and if this is not right, then contact us. And apparently, what these guys do is they get you to install commercial off-the-shelf remote control software, which is unlikely to be detected by antivirus software because it's just a commercial product. Now they're in your computer, and one of the things that they're suggesting you do once they're advising you is to go log on to your bank account and see whether the credit is there. And of course, when you do that, they capture your user ID and password. And if you're one of the millions of people that have not turned on multi-factor authentication, they now have your bank account, user ID, and password. They can log on whenever they want and empty it to whatever degree they want to empty it. So word to the wise, certainly for online banking, turn on two-factor authentication, absolutely, positively, and don't fall for these scams. If there's anything we can do to help you, please give us a call. We would appreciate that. And until next time, stay safe. Thanks for listening.
Turnkey Cybersecurity and Privacy Solutions offers the complete cybersecurity program for small to medium-sized businesses. They include everything needed to secure your business and meet compliance requirements. Visit our website at turnkeycybersecurityandprivacysolutions.com to learn more.